morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee along with my colleague John North. I'm John Becker, here to unpack the primary that was this week in Knox County, East Tennessee, and the state of Tennessee. Yes, it was Super Tuesday. John, the turnout wasn't necessarily super.
No, it wasn't super, and it's been trending lower. Chris was right. He was sort of apologetic about it. I think total turnout in Knox County was about 60,000 early plus Tuesday. Not so great.
That's about 20% of people who could vote did vote. We're going to get to our panel to break this down in just a moment, but first, we turn to reporter Vinay Simlot with a reminder that every vote does count and just how quickly your vote can have an impact on what happens in our politics.
The vote was unanimous.
A novel plan to fill a vacancy by the county commission. Let the voters decide.
This has been kind of a whirlwind.
Travis Wright won the Republican primary for the open seat. Democrats didn't have a candidate in this race,
Member of the Board of Education.
meaning County Commission voted to have Travis Wright take the oath 6 months early.
They're going to try to get me up to speed, especially with things going on for the meeting tomorrow night.
With a school board meeting Thursday, we showed the new member the meeting agenda on Tuesday night.
You kind of made it real.
He won his race by more than 1,000 votes. Others were closer.
When you see lower turnouts, particularly in district-based races, but also in countywide races, as we saw last night, it's going to lead to tightened margins.
For the Republican County Commissioner primary representing parts of downtown and East Knoxville, 5 votes separate the two candidates. The Republican property assessor primary has a 12-vote margin.
I'm disappointed in the turnout overall. I want to thank the voters who came out to vote.
And for the people who did show up, it wasn't always for the local races.
Trump.
It was the presidential primary.
National races motivate voters by and large, yes.
And when people get involved in local government, it can be tense. We asked the newest school board member about issues like library book bans and third grade retention.
I don't really have enough knowledge to make comments on those right now.
Just 45 hours after the voters decided, we'll have to know.
I'm ready to do this.
All right, we are back with our political analyst, Don Bosch, who's a Democrat, runs his own law firm. And Don, good to see you again.
Good morning.
Susan Richardson-Williams runs her own PR firm. She's a Republican. Nice to have you back.
Good morning.
And yes, indeed, it is Sunday morning, and we are taping prior to knowing the results, the outcome on a Friday morning of those 2 races that are in question. So you'll know that. We aren't going to talk about it necessarily as the winners of, because we just don't know at the time we're taping. So, Susan, having said that, what stood out to you on Election Day?
Well, absolutely the close race for property assessor, I think. 12 votes, incredible. There are provisionals, and again, we're not going to know. We don't know now what will happen, but I think we all expected that to be close. I'm not sure I thought it would be 12 votes, but a reminder that Glenn Jacobs, our mayor, won by 23, and he added, I think it was 16 originally, and then added 7 in the provisionals. So those provisionals do make a difference.
And remind us, for people who aren't sure about those candidates, both are pretty well known. Phil Ballard using a tactic saying re-elect Phil Ballard because he's held that position before, even though he's not the most recent incumbent.
Well, he'd also been a county commissioner, and so his name's been on the ballot many times.
Go ahead and say it, Susan. He was first on the ballot.
He was first on the ballot, which does make a difference when you've got a 12-vote margin, I think. But Jackie Raley's worked there for a long time. She was supported by City County and by the current property assessor. So that race was certainly the one I think we all wanted to watch and to see what happened. And then some of the county commission races that were, fairly close to.
We'll dive into some specifics there, but just your top headline and takeaway, Don.
I would call this the election of sadness. And it has nothing to do with the parties. It does 2 things. One, as John mentioned at the top of the show, the turnout. The turnout is just really abysmal and sad to think that, we can't get people out to decide who's going to run their local government, put president aside. But 2, the undervotes, and we don't talk about that much, but a lot of people went in there, threw their vote down for Biden or Nikki Haley or Donald Trump, and walked out. and they did not vote for the other offices. And that just astounds me. I know particularly the Republican ballot was a little more difficult to navigate because of the delegates question, but I was really just saddened by the fact that, folks, if you're going to take the time, go down to a voting station, sit down in the, register, go through that line, sit down at a table, and vote. Vote for all of the offices. Get yourself educated, even if it's 5 minutes, and vote for everything that means something in your life.
John, your top takeaway before we take a quick break.
I guess I would agree with what Chris Davis said, and it goes back to Susan's point. Listen, if you want to make a difference, you better turn out and vote. And there were repeated instances where this was just, you felt like a lot of people just didn't bother, and they should have, because they owe it to the rest of us to turn out to help make sure we've got a decision that's strong.
All right, we're going to leave it there for the moment. We're going to be digging into some of the specifics we talked about in terms of who against who in the general election that's coming up in August. And also, does money matter? Did it matter in this election? We'll get to that on this Inside Tennessee, breaking down the election. Super Tuesday. We're back right after this.